is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
You know, I had a way that I was going to begin the podcast, and then watching Alex for the last 2 minutes trying to get us together. I don't know. It completely threw me. Welcome to the Last Minute Blues Podcast. Donnie Fandango, Alex Ferrario, and joining us from, I believe. Wait, are you in Jersey proper, JR? Or are you in New York and then travel over to Jersey for the game?
I'm in downtown Newark right now. I'm actually, you could walk out the door and walk into the Prudential Center right next door. So yesterday when I went to the Prudential Center for practice, I was walking in the door, and guess who was walking out? Marty Brodeur.
Hey.
So he stopped me, tried to get a selfie and an autograph, and I just kind of kept going there.
And you said no pictures.
Listen, I've got too much going on, Marty. I'm sorry. I can't do it right now. I owe you one, buddy.
JR said, my security's not here yet, Marty, so please don't talk to me, and I haven't had my coffee.
Hey, I don't want to just completely crap on a city, but I think I'm gonna.
Oh, okay,
so
good.
I've been to Newark twice, and it is almost to me like what I would view like a post-apocalyptic sort of thing. It's just I just remember a lot of crummy buildings and oil refineries, and it was just people live here? I was not impressed.
The only instance I have of New Jersey is the Impractical Jokers, and I think they just crap on the New Jersey area all the time because they're from Long Island. So that's my only instance of New Jersey.
Well, see, and I'm a Sopranos guy. So I am into Jersey, but man, being in Newark, I just wasn't blown away by any stretch.
Well, let's just say that I did Uber Eats last night.
There you go.
All right,
had it delivered.
Real question, what did you Uber Eats, JR?
You know what? I've only done that twice in my life. But last night when I was scrolling, you haven't eaten all day. You're kind of tired, so you pick one of the first thing. I went the Applebee's route, a little bit of, pasta, broccoli, chicken. So kept it safe.
You even went sort of healthy.
What the hell are you doing, man? You didn't get chicken wings or something? What are you doing, man?
I would have gotten 6 billion of those riblets. I haven't been there in forever. They've got a riblet fry basket. I would jump into that thing head first right now. Gosh dang it.
You can, but then your fingers are too messy to type, so I couldn't have written my story.
JR's got to type up a story on the Athletics. It's covered in ribs.
So, I mean, we just jump right into this. The reason that we wanted to make sure that we knocked out a podcast this week was obviously because of the absolutely massive news that we woke up to on Sunday morning, and the Blues had replaced Drew Bannister with Jim Montgomery, who was let go last week from the Boston Bruins. And I want to kind of sort of fast forward just a little bit to the press conference when Doug Armstrong is telling us, I wasn't thinking about this until Wednesday morning. I hadn't even thought about it. And I'm just thinking to myself, you, sir, are lying about this. I almost kind of wondered if Doug Armstrong was kind of vulture-like, where he was just kind of circling, just waiting to see if Boston was going to let him go. But, guys, I just kind of want to talk about, this from all angles. But I was legitimately surprised that this move was made. Are you guys surprised? I'm betting that you're not.
I wasn't surprised, JR. I didn't think it was going to happen that fast. I thought this was going to take some time. Frankly, part of me thought that this was going to take until the offseason. If you're Jim Montgomery, you get let go by Boston, and it's, do I really want to get back into coaching right away? We saw Craig Berube do this, right, where he gets let go in December. He just kind of scouts for the Blues the rest of the season, does TNT, and then in the offseason, it's first come, first serve. I'm like Golden Corral, boys. The buffet's wide open. Who wants to talk to Jim Montgomery? I thought that's where it was going to go, and the Blues would have fallen into that conversation of other teams if they were interested, depending on how their offseason was going to go. But then when the Athletic article came out by Fluto saying that the Blues are the top priority, you just kind of wondered if things don't go well, and we talked about this last week on the pod, Donnie, if things don't go well for a team that believes they're they're in the playoff competing window to where they should be a playoff team, I just really wondered if things turned for the worse for the Blues this season, that they would have let Drew Bannister go and they would have went with Montgomery. I didn't think it was going to happen after one game against the New York Islanders, but Doug Armstrong has proven to be a very quick man. And what did he say, JR, to Jim Montgomery? When I'm hungry, I like to eat.
Wow.
Yeah, when I see something that looks delicious, I eat. And Jim said that I must have been a T-bone steak that day from Applebee's. So.
And JR was like, yeah, I Uber Eats that one.
Yeah. No, I was, let me take this back. So as I was putting on my church clothes and getting ready to leave with the family to church, did I think that there was going to be an announcement that Jim Montgomery is going to be the new coach? No, but, as we talked about last week, I know you two talked about on the podcast, I wrote at The Athletic, it made sense, right? Jim Montgomery is a guy that they've been looking at ever since he left. I know that if he were available last year, they would have tried to hire him. He wasn't available under contract with Boston. Obviously, like you said, Donnie, I think that Doug Armstrong was paying attention to that situation because there's been rumblings for a couple weeks that Jim Montgomery could be let go. And when he was, Army pounced. And I think that he did it for two reasons. He did it because he wants to be competitive, and I really tried to stress that in my article last week. Look, everybody knows this is a retool, but Doug Armstrong wants to make the playoffs, and it's still November. You're, 6 points out of a wild card spot at this point. The sooner you make this move, the better in terms of making the playoffs, in terms of Doug Armstrong and his thoughts. And then secondly, as he said a couple times during the press conference, Doug Armstrong said, looking at who's going to lead this team when it gets to that next level, and they think Jim Montgomery can be that guy. So, it's the perfect storm in terms of what the Blues wanted. It became available, and Doug Armstrong went after it.
I went back when we were talking about this last week when the whole thing started and the speculation of if it could happen. I went back and looked at the quote from Doug Armstrong when Ken Hitchcock was hired in 2011, 2012. And the quote, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me, but the quote was, as a general manager, you look for benchmarks with your team, and we felt like our team wasn't meeting those benchmarks. We view our team as young, but we view our team as needing to progress in the right direction, which is why we went out and got an experienced head coach that can get us there. And I was reading that quote about Ken Hitchcock, and I was thinking, it's like, man, you just take Ken Hitchcock's name and you put Jim Montgomery's name, and then when you heard the press conference with Doug Armstrong, I thought it was clear as day what they were trying to accomplish. They've made all of the necessary aggressive moves to put a competitive team on the roster. Broberg, Holloway, you bring in a couple of veterans in Suter, Joseph, Foxa, and then you sit there and say, we're a playoff team. Yes, you dealt with a lot of injuries, and that is a really tough spot for Drew Bannister to be in. But even with those injuries, it just didn't feel like you were progressing and taking the steps to be considered a playoff team. Like you were closer to being a top 5 pick in the draft again.
Yeah.
And when the coach became available, it was like, well, we are saying we believe we're a playoff team. This is where our window starts to open. Although they are still stating that it's a retool, you got to go get the guy that's good for the now and good for the future.
Guys, is there anything that could have kept Bannister here? If the Blues' record was fantastic and this happened, is Bannister still here? We're not talking about Montgomery. Is the fact that the team was just kind of, I don't know, man. I mean, they didn't look fantastic. You know what I mean? Was there anything that Drew Bannister could have done to keep this gig outside of having the best record in the NHL? Because it certainly seems like, it really just seems like Armstrong was waiting for the opportunity to bring Montgomery here.
JR, I real quick, I saw a Greg Wyshynski tweet when Drew Bannister was let go and Jim Montgomery took over. And Wyshynski, however you like him, I still think he's pretty funny on Twitter. He tweeted the 3 things that went wrong for Drew Bannister was 1, you had really bad injuries to your players in Thomas and Broberg. 2, your goaltenders weren't playing to the level of expectation, I guess, that everybody else in the NHL thought. And 3, you weren't Jim Montgomery.
Yeah.
And that's where it really felt like, JR, it was for Drew Bannister. It's like this had nothing to do with Drew and everything to do with the individual that was available.
Yeah, 100%. I got a little bit of pushback on it, guys. I don't know. I think I had it in my article. Sometimes you lose track. Is it in the article or did I read it on Twitter? What did I do here? But
or did I just think it?
Did I think it? No, there's a lot of times. I wondered, did I just think that? But I think I actually wrote it this time. But I said that I don't think that even if the Blues had 10 extra points in the standings, 15 extra points in the standings, guys, I don't know if they had the best record in the league. Maybe if they had the best record in the league, you can, do I really make this move? But this is how bad Doug Armstrong wanted Jim Montgomery. Look, in the big picture of things, let's say that he didn't go do this. And let's say that in a year and a half, Jim Montgomery's having success with the Detroit Red Wings. Is Doug Armstrong going to look back and say, well, I'm glad we had those 10 points extra in November? No, that's not the case. He was doing it for the here and now. Like Alex said, he was doing it for the future. Once Jim Montgomery became available, that's who he was going after. So, you could even say Robert Thomas is healthy, Philip Broberg's healthy, the Blues have 13 extra points in the standings. I still believe Doug Armstrong's making this move.
I do too, because it really felt like that if Jim Montgomery were to be let go by Boston in the offseason, if they would have lost that first round, he would have let go. I think Jim Montgomery would have been here.
And to start the season.
And 4 days after Boston advanced to advanced to the second round last year in the playoffs, that was when Drew Bannister was hired. So it really felt like Doug Armstrong did his due diligence, and this isn't any discredit to Drew Bannister, because Drew Bannister made it above a lot of the other guys that were in contention for that job. But it felt like it was Drew Bannister or Jim Montgomery in the offseason. And when Jim went back to Boston, it was like, well, we've got Drew Bannister.
All right, so a quick question that's probably in the weeds and not really all that important, but one of the reasons I thought that they brought in Claude Julien was to kind of be sort of that veteran, have that veteran coaching presence to kind of help out with Drew Bannister. So does this, does Montgomery coming in, is that going to change who is behind the bench? I would assume that Steve Ott is going to stay where he's at, but I wondered specifically about Claude Julien. Maybe he's thinks in his head, well, why the heck wasn't I considered if they were going to let go of Bannister? Do you guys put any thought into that whatsoever?
No, I don't. It's a good question, fair question. I don't, because, when Drew Bannister brought in Claude Julien, he was the one who pushed it. Like, I talked to Drew about this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I talked to Drew about this several times, and he said, look, people are going to look at this like Claude Julien's going to take over for me if I get fired, but I don't care. I want his expertise on the bench. And when I spoke to Claude Julien, he said, look, my days are done. I want to come in here. I want to be in the NHL, but I'm perfectly fine being an assistant coach at this point in my career, so I have no aspirations there. And I think Claude Julien, smart enough to know that once Jim Montgomery became available, great coach, has had success here recently. That's who Doug Armstrong's going to go after. So I don't think the way it's played out, I don't think anybody's looking at it like any situation other than the Blues replaced Drew Bannister with Montgomery because that's who they wanted.
I think it was after. I think it was after the game. I don't exactly remember where I saw this Braden Shin interview, but after the game against the Rangers on Monday night, where the Blues, man, took it to the blue shirts.
Yeah.
And it also, if you're a fan of the Rangers,
woof.
Yikes.
I might start to be pressing that panic button, because if you did not have a goaltender, you would be absolutely freaking buried.
What makes you hit the panic button for them? The fact that they're 0 for 10 in their last power plays, or the fact that their GM's like, yeah, we're probably going to trade the guy that scored 50 goals for us a couple of years ago because we need to shake things up?
Yeah, okay, so let's come back to that, because I do have a Chris Kreider question.
Put a pin in that.
Let's put a pin in it. But in listening to Braden Shin talk, and I'm not even exaggerating, I think when talking about Montgomery, he used the word respect like 5 times. And I honestly don't believe that I'm exaggerating there. So it's interesting to me that Montgomery sort of comes into this locker room with way more cash than Drew Bannister probably ever had. So it almost seems like the locker room was kind of, this happened, uh-oh, here we go, we're at attention, and we've got a head coach that's going to be here. Let's go. Like, it just seemed like it sort of changed it almost looked different in his mindset as he was talking about it.
And I'll say this too, because that's a really good point, Donnie. What felt different with this one than when, Berube was fired and Bannister took over, the reaction was very somber by the players, to where it's like, oh man, look, we got this guy fired. We got Craig Berube fired. This is on us. We need to be better. And I'm not saying that they didn't feel that way, because Robert Thomas, the first thing out of his mouth was like, look, this is on Drew, or for Drew Bannister, he was an incredible coach for us. He helped us a lot this year. But it sounded an awful lot like, from the players' perspective, to where it was like nodding, like, yeah, this makes sense. Because I think the players understood. I mean, throughout that media day before the season began in training camp, we had so many guys filtering through that's like, yeah, we believe that we got an opportunity to be a playoff team this year. Like, the players believed it. And it just wasn't working out on the ice. And then it's like, once they found out that Jim Montgomery was brought in, like half of that locker room already knows Jim Montgomery, played with him when he was the assistant coach. But it also just felt like the players, and Shen even said, look, we weren't playing well. Yeah, Jim Montgomery comes in with a lot of understanding and knowledge when it comes to the NHL, and now we need to take what he's providing us and go out there and perform a little bit better. It just felt different than when coaches had been fired in the middle of the season and a new coach took over.
Absolutely.
Yeah, It really felt different, guys. And, I got to say this, and none of this is, I don't want any of it to come out as, disrespect for Drew Bannister, because he was put in a tough position.
Totally.
And at the end of the day, it was a tough, raw deal that he encountered. But, having said that, I will say this. I think that at the start of the season, with the additions that they made, especially Broberg and Holloway, they felt like they could be a good team. But in terms of the coaching situation, they took it for what it was. Hey, this is what we had to do. They probably saw through it, too, that Jim Montgomery wasn't available. They probably wished that he were available. But, hey, Drew came in, did a good job. Let's try to be as good of a team as we could. But I think as the season got going, then you have the injuries. Then you just have a situation where it's like, what? Is he the guy? He's probably not the guy that they want in the long term anyway. Is he a stopgap coach? How much do I pay attention to what his message is and what he's delivering? Okay, now we've lost a couple leads late and we're sitting back, and then Pavel Buchnevich comes out and says, we're not spending time on the offense, we're working on the defense. I just think it got to a point where there were a lot of internal questions about Drew Bannister and whether he could even keep the team competitive and get them into the playoffs if they were healthy, is what I believe. And so I gotta think that as soon as they saw Jim Montgomery was available, there were text threads flying with the players hoping that Doug Armstrong was going to make that move, and he did. And I got to tell you, being in the locker room the past couple days, Robert Thomas, as you mentioned, did say, hey, if you're going to talk to me, let's everybody do this at once. I want my message, and I want to start out saying that Drew Bannister is a great guy, great person, and he was a good coach for me. And I thought that was really good of him to do, right? Yeah, to come out and do that. But that's about the only thing I've heard in terms of player reaction to Drew Bannister. It honestly is. Everything, the vibe, the energy in the locker room, everything is a lot more upbeat than it was a week ago.
Well, and that's Jim Montgomery. Everything you've heard about Jim Montgomery, whether it was in Dallas. We interviewed Ben Bishop a couple of days ago, who played with him in Dallas, and said, man, and Joey even said, like, he hates this term, the player's coach. But Ben Bishop was like, he really is. Like, he's always in your ear. He's always talking with you. He never puts you in the spotlight when you're playing poorly, but he's always honest with you. And Ben Bishop says this. And then you hear, Thomas and Shen and Buchnevich all talking about Jim Montgomery, who played with him for 2 years as an assistant coach. And you see the reaction in Boston from Pasternak and Marchand. Like, you see the conversation about Jim Montgomery, and it was eerily similar to what it was with Craig Berube when he was brought in. Like, everybody talked about how good he was in the locker room, how much the door was wide open, and the players felt comfortable. But the part for me, and I don't know if you guys noticed this on the broadcast against the Rangers, man, watching him work that bench was impressive. I mean, Kyrou, after he scores the goal, the first person in Kyrou's ear, Jim Montgomery, joking around with him. Bolduc takes that cross-checking penalty in the second period. What's the first thing Bolduc sees when he hits the bench? Jim Montgomery explaining to him how to handle that cross-check a little bit better. Like, he was working that bench about as perfect as you can ask somebody to work.
And so, guys, one of the things that I have been really excited to ask you is, as a Blues fan, how do you think that Montgomery is going to sort of skew this team? What is he going to do that can maybe help with the scoring, help with these specialty teams? What do you think that Montgomery brings to the table that can make a difference now?
JR, I'm going to let you go because the ultimate optimist should probably take a step back for a second.
Yeah. Well, the number one thing is going to be confidence. I mean, you look at Zach Bolduc when Jim Montgomery talks to him in the morning and says, I want you to go out and shoot the puck, and then you go out and shoot the puck 7 times and score twice. Like, that confidence is the number one thing. But beyond the confidence, because, any coach can hopefully come in and give a little bit of that, I think what I heard from the players after the Ranger game were the pre-scout. Hey, this is what they do. This is what we want to do. So the game plan and the fact that they went out there and they did some of the things that Jim Montgomery said to do, and it worked, and the Rangers didn't adjust, and they scored goals based on it. You combine the X's and O's with the confidence building from a coach, and that's the perfect ingredients. And so we can't stress enough that it was just one game, right? They're not going to score. Well, I say they're not going to score 5 against Jersey tonight. And
here comes 7.
Here comes 7. But all I'm saying is it was a good start. It was a good start in terms of they believe this is who he is, and it worked on night 1, and then you go from there.
I think confidence is the biggest thing, like JR mentioned. But there were a couple of – so Ben Bishop, when we asked him about in Dallas, like, because prior to Jim Montgomery, it was Ken Hitchcock, and that was the team that missed the playoffs. And, we asked Ben, was there something on the ice that Montgomery fixed? And Bishop immediately laughed, and he goes, yeah, I stopped seeing as many odd man rushes as I was used to. So, Jim Montgomery is a defensive-minded guy. He knows how to shut things down. And that, if you look at his time in Boston, if you look at his time in Dallas, the team was never amazing offensively, but they were at the top 5 of defensive conversations in terms of goals allowed, shots allowed, high danger scoring chances allowed. So, and I think your colleague J.R. Fluto in The Athletic said, you're going to see Colton Parayko's minus numbers move back into the plus for how good this coach is defensively. But then the other thing that Fluto brought up that I saw in the game was Jim Montgomery loves advanced analytics. He's always looking at that, going into what J.R. mentioned about the pre-scouting. He talked about how, Jim Montgomery noticed that, the goal line passes in the offensive zone are a lot more effective because you get the goalie going from one side to the other. Go look at that Braden Shen pass that he made on the goal line up to Jordan Kyrou for the first goal against the Rangers the other night.
Yeah, classic example.
I think Jim Montgomery, like JR mentioned, is going to have a lot of these advanced analytics / kind of trends in the league that he believes works. And the Blues, because they're confident and they're willing to listen to that, see the benefits of it on the ice, and then you start to get a lot more offensive-minded team on the ice.
Yeah, and I'll add real quickly that yesterday at practice here in Newark, that's what they worked on. They worked on the neutral zone, and I heard your interview with Ben Bishop, and it added up. What he said about them preventing the odd man rushes. Ben Bishop didn't see a lot of them. That's what they were working on yesterday in his really first official practice with the team. And then Alex, I did notice that work under the goal line.
Yeah.
In the game the other night, the Braden Shen pass, so on and so forth. And I asked Jim Montgomery about that. I said, is that something that you really like to do with your offense? And he said, offense and defense. We want to work below both goal lines at both ends of the ice because it presents you with another option. So if you're a defenseman and you can't get the puck up the ice, let's go around the net and go back up the other side. Let's use that ice. He said use it on both sides, so that is another aspect of this.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, but I just want to let you guys know. So I've been really trying my best over the course of the last couple of weeks to kind of sort of keep my excitement with this team, the ups and the downs, tempered. Okay? Tempered.
Jared, we've officially broken Donnie.
Okay.
We've broken him.
Okay, but now, after that game on Monday night, and not only the game on Monday night, but the pregame interview that Montgomery did with JK, with John Kelly, oh my God. I said to my kid who was sitting on the couch with me, I think I would run through a wall for this guy already, and he's been here for a day. You know what I mean? So, I just, my level of excitement is back. And again, but to talk about it, it does change my expectations. And honestly, and I don't mean to sound crummy, but if we don't make the playoffs, I'm going to be really friggin' bummed out. And I think a week ago, I was in the mindset of, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs. It's not the year. So it's crazy to me that in a week, this has done a 180.
Well, I mean, just my opinion on this, JR, the moves have signified people should view this team as a team that can compete for a playoff spot. If at the end of the year you're talking about a top 5 pick, to me, I think the front office would view that as a failure.
Yeah.
Because of the offseason moves that they did, the aggressiveness of going to get Broberg and Holloway, even Doug Armstrong talking about how, look, we're not in the business of gathering assets anymore. We're in the business of competing, but also developing these younger players that we have. And Jim Montgomery's not going to force Dvorsky to the NHL. It's not going to rush a Snuggerud or a Lindstein to the NHL. Montgomery's making the team better so that when those younger guys get to the team next year or at the end of this season, they just fit right in like a nice puzzle piece. But, I mean, at least the aggressiveness of the front office to where 5 days after a guy gets fired, you hire him and give him a 5-year contract extension, that to me signifies that they believe this is a team that can compete for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think they think they can still do it, especially, now with the situation, with the coaching change. But I'll say this, I just did some numbers, and I think the Blues' points percentage right now is just over .450. And if I do the math right, that puts you at 75 points. You're going to need 95 at least. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you got to pick up 20 points somewhere along the way. And, if you can get this thing trending upward, you can pick up 20. It's possible. I mean, right now you're 6 behind a wild card spot. But here's the bright news. If Jim Montgomery can come in and get this team playing better, specifically on the offensive side, which I wrote about the other day. Guess what's happening on the defensive side pretty soon, guys? I'll give you one guess.
Well, Philip Broberg.
Philip Broberg,
That wasn't my guess. My guess was they were going to play faster. Come on.
Philip Broberg skated with the team yesterday here in Newark, and he's going to skate today again, I believe, with the optional. The Blues are going to have an optional. But yesterday it was his first day of practice with contact, and so they're going to see how it goes. But can you guys, I know you can, think back to about 6 weeks ago when you were without Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg, and now you have Thomas back after just 4 weeks. You could be getting Broberg back Saturday. If not Saturday, maybe next week. And, oh, by the way, you just added a coach that the team wants to play for and feels like they can be their best with Jim Montgomery. I mean, just things have taken a dramatic turn.
Okay, I have 2 more questions here real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. One, am I crazy, or did Scott Perunovich have another fantastic night on Monday night?
That outlet pass to Braden Shen was impressive. This isn't a Jim Montgomery thing. Drew Bannister figured this out with Scott Perunovich, but I also think Scott Perunovich figured this out with himself. That Capitals game unlocked the confidence, and then from there, he has not stopped. He has been great in the offensive zone. I even think he's been great in the defensive zone as well. You're not seeing those little mistakes that were taking place in prior where the confidence wasn't there with Perunovich. I mean, for me, that's a guy that if he's playing 18, 19 minutes a night, it doesn't concern me if I'm a coach or another team.
JR, what do you think?
There's no bigger confidence guy that I can remember covering than Scott Perunovich. And when he has it, he can play like this. He can. And so what I think is happening here is, I don't know if, I'm guessing Broberg, when he's ready, will jump back into that second pair. Usually when you're back in, I mean, you're ready to go, you're 100%. Does he need a game in the third pair? I don't know, with, 12 minutes. We'll see. But when he is ready and he's in the lineup, and he's back in that second pair with Justin Falk. By the way, I almost wrote Marshall Falk in an article the other day.
Wow, you are really living in the 90s.
That I think that they are going to be really excited about having Scott Perunovich in that third pair and in the lineup every night. I really do think he's put himself on that level.
Just because I'd like to look into the future, if that's all right with you guys. Broberg comes back. Does he play with Parayko? Or do you put him back with Falk?
You know what? That's a good point.
Just because, and my only reasoning with it, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Ryan Suter's playing a lot of minutes, and he's been great at it. But at some point, you look at it and say, hey, big boy, we don't want to wear you down in the middle of the season because we're going to need you at the end of the season. Yep. And Broberg looked the part. Now, obviously, you have to ramp back up. You can't be playing 21 minutes a night. But I don't know if it just goes back to normal to where it's like, Broberg with Falk and Perunovich goes to the third pair and Suter stays up there. I really wonder if they look at this and say, let's give Suter a little bit of a relief and let Broberg go off and run.
Yeah, so I didn't think about it that way, the way you are, until just now. But I do think it's a little bit complicated because, yes, you probably don't want to keep Suter up there. You probably want to move him down and lessen the minutes a little bit. But until you can get Broberg, 100% up to speed, and do you want to play him 23 minutes a night right out of the gate? And so maybe they move Broberg up. But the other thing is Nick Leddy's skating again too, and he's going to be back, but he's going to be in a similar position, probably even worse off than Broberg because he's been out so long that I don't know, you can throw Nick Leddy out there and get back to 22 minutes first couple games. So I do think that once you get these guys back, it'll all figure itself out. But the Broberg, Leddy back in the lineup probably knocks Suter down, but I think that Perunovich is going to, probably be in the lineup too. We'll see. So.
That's what I was just going to say. Boy, that's going to be fascinating because, like, Perunovich, I don't know if he deserves to come out of the lineup when everybody's healthy, but do you shift a Perunovich over to the right side so that you could put a Leddy in there? Yeah, because Perunovich played that last year, JR, and he even said he's comfortable on his offhand.
It's pretty amazing, though, that it seems as though this is shaking out for the Blues to have some really good options.
Depth.
Well, when everybody is healthy, and the way that the depth works, somebody's going to get banged up along the way. So that's another positive here.
That's a very big positive.
Okay, well, I'm starting to get real excited.
There it is, JR. He's back. He's back. We fixed him.
Back.
No, but it's not a you fixed. But I think one of the things that I love about doing this, man, is because I'm learning. I'm learning as a fan, and I think sometimes as a fan, the ebbs and flows kind of have you a little bit off.
That's the part about it.
They might be off right now, but I don't care. I'm going to ride the high, man. I'm going to ride the high,
guys. Let's get fat and happy with it.
Hey, JR, you have written about 37.
Fatter.
JR, you read
Come
like
on, man.
37 articles over the course of the last 3 or 4 days.
Donnie hasn't read one of them.
Would you please stop? Yes, I have. I wanted him to be able to talk about the articles and send people to The Athletic. I was going to do the same for you, Ferrario, and your radio show, but I don't know that I want to do that anymore.
I understand him. I understand that one.
What do people tell people to go to The Athletic and read what you've written about, JR, please? Please, that's all that this was for.
Go to The Athletic and read the articles that I wrote.
There's this right there.
You'll find out about Montgomery. You'll find out about all things related to your St. Louis
He
Blues.
put a lot of riblets into the last article that he wrote in.
I'm just trying.
No sauce on my hands.
No, only on the laptop.
And you can always catch out what Alex has going on your podcast with BK and Ferrario.
And you could always catch out Donnie on The Point, The Arch, WIL, Keishi 101. Podcast. He's everywhere.
I don't have anything podcasted though. I think that's for a good reason. There's only so many times you need to hear me backsell Alice in Chains Man in the Box. All right, so a couple things here. JR, very much happy travels to you on the way back, good sir.
Thanks, bro.
To my friends here, Alex and Jeremy, I'm so unbelievably thankful for the both of you. I love doing this podcast with
Same
you.
here.
I hope you have absolutely great Thanksgivings, and everybody that's listening, we appreciate you. We are very thankful for you, and also thankful for our St. Louis Blues. For Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, I'm Donnie Fandango. For our friend Jeff Burton, let's go Blues!